Now, we all know that Google and Apple have their own respective suite of services and offerings and products as part of their ecosystem. And despite the fact that I've switched almost everything over to the Apple side of things now, there's still a few things from Google that I just can't get rid of. First, real quick, let's set the stage. Now, I have multiple videos talking about my transition from Android to Apple, so I'm not going to recap that again. Go check that out if you're interested. But what I really wanted to do was fully embrace the Apple ecosystem and not only switch as many products as I could, but also switch as many services over to the Apple side of the fence as possible. For example, probably the biggest one was switching from YouTube Music over to Apple Music. There was Google TV to Apple TV, Google Chrome to Safari, Google Keep to Apple Notes and Reminders, Google Fit to Apple Fitness and Health, Google News to Apple News, Google Pay to Apple Pay. And one of the weirdest ones that I did not expect to like was actually going from Google Maps to Apple Maps. And I know what you're thinking. Apple Maps? Really? Apple Maps? Yeah, well, surprisingly good. Go check it out. However, with all that said, you'll notice that there's still a few things that I did not mention. And that's because either I haven't switched or I use a combination of both. The first one, without a doubt, Gmail. Okay, Gmail is not going anywhere, period. Now, the next one that I think Google does way better is the Calendar app. I just can't stand how on the Apple Calendar, regardless of how many events that day, whether it's one tiny little appointment or an entire day, it could be my busiest day of my whole life, the calendar just shows a dot. Like, hey, you're doing something today, just a dot. And if it's a holiday and I don't have anything planned, still just a dot. So then you look at your month view calendar and everything just literally has a dot. And it doesn't help me at all in my day-to-day planning. Google Calendar, on the other hand, actually shows you the events. Even when you're on the month view, which I use most of the time, it still shows you the color-coded tasks with the text of what the task is, puts them in the timeline of the day. And I use this so often that it just makes Apple Calendar completely unusable to me. So let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm missing something on Apple Calendar, but it just seems completely useless to me. Next is Google Home. Now, 99% of my smart home devices throughout the entire house are either Z-Wave or Zigbee devices, which are not HomeKit compatible. One thing I have been considering is doing the Home Bridge. I don't know if anybody out there uses the Home Bridge. If so, let me know in the comments what you think about it. But that's one thing that I've been considering to basically port over everything from my smart things and my Google Home into Apple HomeKit so that I can use the Apple Home app. Now, the next couple things are for actually the same reason, and that reason is right over here. I don't know if you can see it, but that's the Nest Hub Max. Now, we have multiple of these things throughout the house, along with some just regular Google Minis, Google Home Minis, and that's because we use Google Assistant throughout our entire house to control the lights, control everything associated with our smart home. It's kind of funny to me that Siri has basically become like a joke around the industry, and it's just completely useless. Even for me, somebody who does almost everything with the Apple ecosystem, I still have Google Assistant devices throughout the entire house because they're just way better. And the one that goes along with this is actually Google Photos. And that's because on these Nest Hubs that we have throughout the house, we use them to display our family portraits and photos, and the only way to do that is to have them pull from the Google Photos app. Meaning, I still have to have a weird combination of Google Photos and Apple Photos. They do sync together, so I have it so that any photo that I take on my iPhone automatically syncs up to Google Photos, puts it in the album to then go onto the Nest Hub Max. And really the only way that I'll ever be able to get rid of Google Photos is if Apple came out with either a smart home display or ideally a dock for the iPad to turn the iPad into a smart display. And I have an entire video on that, so check that one out as well if you're interested in the iPad or the iPad Pro and potential uses for it in the future. But really, that's, like I said, that's the only way that I'll ever be able to get rid of Google Photos. And so that's pretty much all the services that I kind of have to go back and forth on. As far as devices go, like I said, I still have Google Homes throughout the whole house, but that's really the only thing that isn't transferred over to Apple yet. And I guess I could change those to HomePod Minis, but like I said, Siri is just still a joke and not good. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. Let me know in the comments what you think, but really, I don't see a need, so I'm not going to do anything with that for right now. And honestly, that's really all I can think of. So don't forget to check out this video as well.